Hey, Mark. Bud. Getting set up here. Got a spot down the basement. Got cleared out the cellar. New spot, drinking some crap here in a can. Not good, but I'm drinking it. The beast drink. Radix Verum. Just shared the link. Oh, thank you. Good to see you. From Enigma Reports channel, I believe. Good to see you. Good to see you, Mark. So, a lot of stuff going on. Figured talk a little bit, about a few different things. People hear me. There's what was it put on there? There's that black female professor there that had that video where she's really going to town on white folk and whatnot. And drink them if you got them. Yeah, I drink my Monster. But yeah, she's going on white people, basically saying, that black and brown people, they were getting around just fine, crossing the sea and doing all kinds of things before white people, and that white people basically, they think that everything they do is gold, and that there's an end of the white people age coming, and we got to get rid of these mother effers, she says. And just basically this whole perpetuation of, white systemic racism and white supremacy. And it's one of those videos where you can easily look at the woman and you can call her names and say all sorts of things about her, because she's a really, hideous looking woman with an even more hideous heart and hideous mind. And that's the biggest thing, right? Like, she sits there and she tries to act like a man, first of all. Speaking of which, just get a little bit off topic, but with the whole women trying to be men thing, I seen that video where, what's her name, Jocinda from New Zealand, and she's sitting there with her hair all slicked right back, like tucked behind her ears, right? And she's sitting there on the table, like, and the reporter's interviewing her, and he's like, don't you think that this is like making a, two-tier society? And she's like, well, let me just stop you right there, because yes, that is what we're doing. Yeah. So, and she's like trying to be like a man. She's sitting there like that, like looking at him, and got her eye, her eyebrow furled up, and he's acting like the woman asking a question, right? And then she interrupts him to say, yeah, no, that's what we're doing here, toots. Any more questions? Duh. Right? And then you got that video of Hillary Clinton, and I don't know who she's with, but she's being interviewed by somebody in the UK there, and she's sitting back in her chair, like, same thing, hair slicked back, right? And she's all there. Yeah, the UK really needs to bring in mandates and blah blah. And the reporter asked that question. She's like, "That's what we did in New York, and cases went down, and blah blah blah." Right, and just keeps on interrupting and just sitting back like, right, hair all slicked back, trying to act like a fat, greasy Don. Right, that's Hillary Clinton. What's with all these women? Okay, trying to act like men. They're now in these positions of authority, and so now they're trying to act like men, meanwhile telling men that you can't act like men. Isn't that hilarious? Hilarious, bizarro world thing that's going on. And you've got men that act like women. They run around, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to act. They can't make a decision, or they can't they can't step up to the plate and do anything, right? Because they're so scared. They're thinking like 2 or 3 steps ahead of what could happen, and if I did this, what will people think? And oh no, like no ability to act, right? Of course, big ass fly flying around the friggin'. Now, what is that, little hornet or something? You stay away. Anyways, you got these men without any ability to act on anything, right? No ability to stand up for themselves, no ability to, call a spade, right? Like, just, no, well, I better just sit and wait. I wouldn't want to offend anybody. Meanwhile, you get all these women just power tripping, trying to look like men, trying to act like men, right? And then in society, a lot of the guys that act like men, it's this hyper masculine, basically fake masculinity that's been projected onto us over years, right? Where guys go out and they actually try to act like, well, you see it at the gym and stuff like that, like the whole fitness world, right? Where it's like you'll look the part, but you don't act it, right? You got these guys that are super jacked and walking around, and they're just, you know what I mean? They wouldn't get their hands dirty, or like, you know what I mean? They put gloves on for everything, right? Like, don't do anything rough and tumble, right? They're just strictly about the aesthetic, right? They're just strictly about the look. Even some of the big guys, not all of them, of course, not all of them, right? There's guys actually going to put in work for the sake of putting in work, right? Like, that's a different thing altogether, right? And we've all been there in vanity lifting. See how I get all trailed off here and stuff? What was I talking about originally? That black professor. I'll get more onto that stuff later that I was just talking about. But so that lady, right? She's acting like a man. All these women acting like men. You could just call her, she's racist, because she is racist. She totally hates white people. She totally is a selfish pig, right? And just thinks everybody needs to bow to her because she's black, right? Because she's a communist and she signed on with communism, right? And she's been told that this is your time, right, to have your say on white people, right? That's what all these people are about, right? It's like they think it's their time to have their say, and they don't think that there's going to be any repercussions, right? Because there hasn't been any thus far. And that's just what goes to show you, when you let degeneracy and all these kind of mindsets flourish, right? They just keep wanting more and more and more and more and more, until eventually they're calling for your death, right? Which is what we see today. And it's like that video where in the subway station, Well, there's two. First of all, there's that one where the migrant guy raped, I don't know, intoxicated woman, doesn't matter if she's intoxicated or not, raped a woman, assaulted her, and raped her on a subway train. I don't know the full story on it or anything, right? Like, I don't know exactly what all happened, but regardless of what happened, it sounds like a brutal situation, right? And everybody watched it happen. Some people took their phones out and filmed it. Nobody did anything until the cop showed up, however long after the situation started, right? And then he stopped the guy. Like, what's someone doing filming something like that? What's someone doing sitting down and watching that happen? Right? Like, I realize that you're on like a subway, you don't know anybody, so you don't know what's going on, stuff like that. So you go on, you mind your own business, right? Yeah, generally that would be what you would do. But a situation like this, you're just going to sit back and watch a rape take place. How are you justified not to do anything? If you're a guy, how are you justified not doing anything? I don't understand how nobody was over there and started ramming that dude's head off the friggin', the pole that you hold on to. I'm telling you. Or the one here with the girls. There's the dude, and he's mad because something happened. He's some situation at home, personal problems, and he's going off or whatever like that. And this chick or whatever, right? She's this blonde, or she's like, take a chill pill, and she was probably being a little bit mouthy and stuff, right? But at the same time, she was standing up for everybody else, because this guy's being a loudmouth on a friggin' train car, right? That no one else wants to hear his problems, and here he's carrying on and making a problem for everybody else. So she says, take a chill pill, and he says, tell me to chill one more time, right? And she's like, take a chill pill, right? Or chill out or something like that. And he just whack, like just cold cocks her right in the jaw, right? Guy standing right beside her, don't know if he's with her or anything like that. And he's like, look, and everybody's going like, whoa, 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 right? But no one does anything. No one even like got in the way of that situation before it got to her getting punched in the face. Why didn't that dude step in between them, right? No, because he would have been seen as being racist, right? And then any other black people on the train would have jumped him, right? Or right, they scared people so much, right? They've conditioned people so much to think that, oh, he's a black guy, right? There's no way he could be beat. No one can take him. He's black, right? So by default, people are scared of somebody because they're black, right? Doesn't make a lick of sense, right? Because that never happened before in history, but now somehow, right? Blacks beat everybody, right? Athletic, yeah, for sure. Are they like top boxers and top fighters and everything like that? Yeah, for sure. But you know what? There's also this thing that's bred into them that sounds dumb. But okay, for instance, a lot of them with their upbringing, right? If you grow up in the inner city, for example, and you grow up fighting, you grow up, messing around in the streets and stuff like that, but you're not necessarily a super bad kid, you get taken into a boxing club. There's a box club that opens up. So you go to the boxing club, and there's a way to take out your frustrations and your anger, right? So these kids go in there with an aggression and an appetite, right? So when they train, they already have that appetite. So then they get really good, right? And they're already lean, right? So they get really good, and they're really super aggressive. So they become really good fighters. And then the non-super aggressive fighters, right, that don't come from the same backgrounds, they're doing it as a trade, learning how to box and stuff like that, or learning how to fight. Well, they don't have that aggressive nature with them, right? They don't have that instinctual, like aggression, right? So then they go into a fight, and then they automatically lose before the fight starts because they already think they lost. They already know they lost, right? If you can scare somebody before you fight them, guaranteed you're gonna win. If you're scared before you get into a fight, guaranteed you're gonna lose, right? Just like being overly confident going into a fight, chances are you're gonna lose, right? Good chance because you're overcompensating, right? Well, if you're on your heels, right, you can fight defensively, right? But if you're running with your back turned, right, if you're cowering, if you're paying so much attention because you're so worried about getting hit from this individual, when he actually does swing on you, or when he does, do a fake, you're like, you're gonna hesitate, you're gonna do stupid things, you're gonna get caught, right? You're gonna be in a bad situation, right? But you can see in fights, right? Fights are like war simulations, right? When two people fight, who wins? The person who wants it more, right? Usually the aggressor always wins. You can win defensively, yes. There's some really good fighters that are defensive, right? But they're also offensive on their defense. They're not running away, right? Eventually they're landing stuff, whether it be counters or whatnot. But if you don't, if you're not aggressive, if you're not hungry for it, if you can't be pure aggression all the time because then you don't think, right? But a tapped in aggression works really well in a fight. And if your will is more than your enemy's will, then you're going to win every time. You can get caught when you have that moment where you're not thinking, or you're thinking that you've got it, but you haven't taken it yet. You can surely get caught, right? Anything can happen, but not anything just necessarily will happen just for the sake of it happening. Like, there's not just a lucky shot that gets thrown. There's things that go into it, right? You might get caught some kind of weird way, right? But that's an off chance, right? Usually it has to be, it's a timed moment. It's a defensive move, right? It's a counter, right? You see the punch coming before and you're able to get him before he gets you, right? With a counter. But if you're not aggressive, if you don't want the win, if you're scared of your opponent, you're worried what he's going to do to you, it's going to be a hard fight for you. Or it's going to be one of those really boring fights, right? Where it's just, you're doing everything you can just to drag the fight out, right? To hold them down and not really advance or do anything, but just try to get by. So in saying all that, I don't understand how anybody in that situation on that subway train wouldn't have been ready to defend that woman, right? I don't understand that. I don't understand how these guys get away with it day in, day out. Like, all the footage, all the news footage of just people getting beaten in the streets, people getting jumped, people getting like sucker punched and everything like that. Just crazy stuff, right? And they'll also do it to each other, right? And then we see all that, and so then we think, well, that's what all black people are like. But that's the thing. Their culture has been a non-culture, right? When they destroyed the black family, right, they brought in what? Rap culture, hip-hop culture, right? Sports culture, right? Thug culture, right? If you're black, the only thing you aspire to would be an athlete, some kind of entertainer, right? Or a criminal. But you had to excel in one of those three things instead of promoting the normal black family that was, right? No, we got to do away with the black family. Why? Because they were strong. I remember, when I was young, the first black person I seen was in Mike Tyson Punch-Out. Seriously. I would have been like 4 years old, 5 years old. But when I would have seen black people in movies and whatnot, shows or, what have you, I assumed pretty much every black person was a Christian, right? I assumed every black person was a Christian, right? And I assumed most people in general went to church, right? And then as I got older, I realized, okay, not as many people go to church as I thought, but I still thought, oh, black people, they all go to church, right? And then as I got older, then you see more on the TV. They changed what they wanted you to perceive of black people. They started showing you all of the gangster rap, right? All the thuggery, right? All the hot dog sports balling, right? All that stuff, right? The strong, powerful black man that doesn't take any crap from anybody, right? And so then they started showing in movies where there'd always be the black guy and no one could say anything to the black guy. He always said the thing that topped everything else, right? He was always the strongest in the group, right? Whereas before they didn't have to make that point or anything like that, right? Like characters would have their spots and stuff like that, but they really wanted to promote the black guy as being the alpha dominant male, right? And I understand, but it's like there's a reason for it. And then once they, got enough black people to kind of have this idea that, oh, jumpers, we are really successful and we are at the top of sports and we are at the top of the entertainers and we are, we're ascending the heights, right? And as soon as they got to that level, then all of a sudden it was like pure degeneracy. Like even the gangster rap and stuff like that, like went downhill. Like all the black entertainers stuff, they all started going downhill, right? Like they all of a sudden switched, right? Went from being like, the strong male ideal, right, to now just being just absolute degenerates, right, with no moral compass, just nihilistic. Everything is do me, I do me, you do you. But if you do and you gets in the way of me, then pop, pop. Right? Everybody's racist, right? Now they're gonna tell everybody how it is. You see how that worked? They destroyed the black family. Okay. Whatever you think is slavery. So blacks came out of slavery, right? Made themselves, had families, built communities, had all that, right? And then that just got destroyed once segregation or whatever it was in the States and all that. Like once they get rid of that, well, then it basically started destroying the black community, right? Because now all of a sudden there had to be all these government agencies, stuff like that. As soon as they get these movements and they get these government agencies involved, right? All of a sudden it starts creating these problems, right? Then they created the social welfare system for them, right? Just like the natives here, right? Natives here on the reserves are on the, they're not on the necessarily the welfare system. They're on the native system, right? Where the government takes care of them for their entire life and doesn't hold them in any kind of just basically you're giving people free money, but you're not holding them accountable. But you're not giving them your money, you're giving them everybody else's money, right? And that's what they did with black people, especially like down the States. Like they took them out of family units, got them accustomed to one parent households, got them accustomed to committing crimes and going to jail, got them accustomed to crack cocaine, got them accustomed to gangster culture and all that crap, right? And then again, taught them that the only thing to seek for was for the almighty dollar. And it's destroyed them. It's gotten them to the point where they are the focal point, like the face piece of this communist revolution is taking place, right? And George Floyd, St. George Floyd, right? Like, I always thought when black people came out of slavery, right? I thought to myself, man, like they've got to be salt of the earth people, right? And that's why I thought they were all Christian, because I'm like, they came out of slavery and they all believed in Jesus, right? So I mean, like, how good a people must they be if they're able to come out of that and then still, you know, they found Christ in that and then remained faithful after that, right? And then prosper because of that. And I thought, that's pretty awesome. But as the years go on, it's like everything that you're shown now, it's like they've torn what the old was down and they replaced it with this new shiny gold thing, right? But it's just, you know, a little bit of gold plating over a friggin' wax candle that eventually is going to melt, right? And they're doing that with all peoples, because they did it with white people too, right? They've got, because there is this thing, you know, where white people do think that they are better than everybody because, well, we're white in Western civilization and we invented all this stuff and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, I didn't. You didn't. Right? She didn't. Right? People did. Right? People before us. But we haven't really carried the torch very well, our generations. But it's been progressively stolen as well, right? And we've also been taught to reject our birthright from a very young age, to where we went off as prodigal sons. A lot of us, not everybody, but some of us for sure. And then we're like, shoot, we screwed up, right? Because that's where I'm at. You know, I'm thinking like, but at the same time, it's like, no, all these things also had to happen, right? They all had to take place. I mean, everything that's taken place has led us to where we are right now, which is kind of an obvious thing. But when you really start to think about it, no wonder we're where we're at. You know, I know me, right? And I think of my failings, right, and where I've gone wrong. And I know that other people, you know what I mean, are in the same boat. And I know what I've compromised on, and I can see what other people have compromised on, right? And people that are, you know, supposedly better, right? So you can see that collectively, we've all brought us to this point. Camo, what's up? Yeah, it is a depressing state of affairs. But, you know, we got to go through it, don't we? There's no other way but to go through it. We'd love to be able to turn back, but what would we be turning back to, right? Even if we could pause things, it's still going to go forward, right? Unless we all collectively could turn back, right? And I don't mean turn back to, you know, yesterday or the old normal. well before that. Like, there's a lot of things that need to change. A great many things. And I don't think people are really at that point where they're going to do that. But it seems like it's coming. See, I talked about that kind of racial stuff right there, but that is all part of the whole thing for us to be all divided based on our races. In one sense, we should be divided on our races in the sense that we are different peoples, right? But there's also different blacks. There's also different whites, obviously. We all come from different countries, different lands, right? We're not all the same. Not everybody is the same. But they want everybody to have a particular definition and a picture and an idea of who everybody is, so they can put everybody in a little box and a little compartment, right? They want to put a label on everybody, right? Everything has to be boiled down to a simple buzzword or a simple phrase, a simple definition, right? And it's all part of the communist revolution. I say communist, but it is more than communist too, isn't it? Klaus assured us the good old days are gone. There will be no old normal, but a new normal. The fourth industrial revolution. What an evil man, eh? He's quite the guy. And he's so above the clouds right on Mount Olympus that, like, he just sees countries as chess pieces, right? He just sees countries as chess pieces that he can just move around. He just goes and talks to the big wigs at those places and gets them to be on board, and this will be a great new world order. Yeah. Helter Skelter. To me, this is what this all is, right? And Helter Skelter goes beyond, I think, just this racial divide, right? Helter Skelter is the left-right paradigm, okay? Helter Skelter is this idea. No, it's not even the left-right paradigm, sorry. But Helter Skelter is, they're going to give these people control, right? That have wanted it so desperately bad. They're going to give them control for a bit. And when they cause unparalleled destruction, that power is going to be taken from them, right? And it's going to be restored. But who it's restored to is the other question, right? Because in Helter Skelter, it's the blacks and the whites, right? But it goes beyond that. That's just an idea. But that's kind of what's going on. They're letting the worst of society have the highest places of rule. Why is that? Why is that? Because there's lots of people that are turning that way, turning far left, and they're going further and further. But there are many who are waking up, right? They're coming to a realization. But what is that realization? What will it be? What will be the epiphany when they wake up to it? Albert Pike's Third World War, right? It says, they're going to destroy Islam in it. They're going to destroy what's known as Christianity. They're going to destroy Zionism. They're going to destroy atheism, right? Communism, right? Authoritarianism, governments, religion, right? Atheism, nihilism, destroyers of civilization. They're going to cull the herd drastically. It's the Illuminati's plan of taking out all governments, all religion, all institutions, right, and replanning it with 1,000 points of light, right? That pic of him in the black satiny suit. Yeah. It literally looks like a 1980s friggin' Flash Gordon, Flash Gordon, evil nemesis guy. Something that they would wear in like some kind of friggin' Starship Federation or whatever like that of the Dark Lords. The Dark Lords of the Galaxy. In the New World Order, there will be no meat. Only plant-based. That wasn't Klaus Schwab enough there. Plant-based meat. They're calling meat and they're making meat taste bad, right? Because they're getting people to not like meat as much and they're making it unaffordable, right? See, I know what meat tastes like, so you're not going to convince me. But somebody maybe that doesn't have access to good meat, that only has access to really cheap meat, and they keep on downgrading that meat, well then those people, they might be turned off. And if it's really pricey and not that good and mostly gristle, right, then you're not going to like it, right? Or if the chicken is just that zombie chicken. Thoughts on the Hydra? The Hydra, that's a weird one. It makes sense in the sense of this thing is self-replicating in the fact that it, goes into your cells, replicates itself with the spike protein, right, as it attaches and goes throughout all your body and through your vital organs and bloodstream and so on and so forth. As far as like the actual little thing with the tentacles, are they not showing in those videos? Because this is the thing, right? I mean, they're showing the actual spider thing that lives in the ocean, right? Are they actually showing the real Hydra in those pictures? That's what I wonder. Because I know what those things are. I understand what they do, and then they get their legs cut off and they regrow them. But are they actually showing it? Like, you know what I mean? Like, just like coronavirus, we never actually seen coronavirus. All we've seen was the whole time we seen the spike protein, right? The symbol of the coronavirus the whole time from the get-go was the spike protein. Okay. The only thing that seems to be like a real picture to me, Camo, is the one there of like the little, kind of like looks like a radio frequency, kind of weird. Looks like a battery with a little attachment thing on it. It's like a weird shape, kind of rectangular with like squarish kind of. That one there, that was a weird one, right? The graphene oxide, that stuff, that to me, that stuff is very plausible, right? Well, because it is in it, right? And also with the Hydra thing, I mean, they're putting all kinds of different stuff in it, and where they're putting that fetal tissue of that kid from the 60s or the 70s, whatever, and that Henrietta Lacks, I mean, they're putting immortal cell lines. So those cancer cells that were in her and whatever they got from that kid, right, they self-replicate. So they're, in a sense, a Hydra, right? HEK293. Oh, okay. Clone male fetus. Yeah, that's right. It was male. So in that sense, it is a Hydra. But is it in the sense of the actual tentacle things? Well, I don't know. I guess they said it was, but I don't know. If it is, that's weird. I mean, it is a parasite. It makes sense. But it seems to me like these jabs, do all of them have it in it? right? Because there's different, we've also heard of the different levels of them and how they're administered. There's the saline, then there's the, whatever level, and then they go up from there and up and up and up, right, till you get the full dose. So there's that too. So do all of them have it in? That's a good question, right? Because that's the thing, we all know people that have gotten it. Some of them seem perfectly fine. Then others seem to be not doing so good. Some not so good, right? Because they can't have everybody dropping at the same time. They can't have everybody getting sick from the same things. And I also think that in these, what it is doing is this antibody dependent enhancement, which essentially is anything that you come in contact with, like a cold or a flu of any sort, then it's going to really, your system's going to all of a sudden go and take a knipshit just to try to fight this thing. That's just a normal cold and flu, and it's going to treat it like it's this freaking major war going on inside you, and you're going to be in for a bad time. But also, where it says, I was going to say that it's going in through all the cells in your body and all your organs and everything like that. It's going to all throughout your body, attaching itself to different things and whatever, sending messages, doing whatever it does. But it's activating viruses that are already in your body, because we all have viruses in our body. And it could be activating those viruses that are dormant or not yet activated, right? Or it could be taking something that is a cancer that hasn't actually grown or metastasized or whatever it does, right? It hasn't actually grown or become cancer yet, right? But it's there, right? Boom, maybe that flares up, right? Or you've got a propensity to have thick blood, right? You maybe aren't so healthy and you don't have good circulation, and your breathing ways and everything like that are already fairly compromised. So maybe attacks your lungs, maybe attacks your heart, maybe attacks your bloodstream, right? Thickens up, clots you. Seems to be doing a whole host of different things, right? Doesn't seem to be just doing one thing, and that's kind of the way to hide it. Because, I mean, isn't it interesting that the first wave or second wave or whatever wave, everything was COVID. Everything was COVID. Everything was COVID. This was COVID. Heart attack was COVID. Bike accident, whatever. Falling down an elevator shaft. Skydiving. Everything was COVID. Heart attack, cancer, diarrhea death, COVID. Everything was COVID. Now, people are dying of everything, but it's just considered nothing. It's just considered, oh, shoot, how'd that happen? And it just so happens that they've been double jabbed. Or it seems to be in a lot of these cases. The numbers are certainly showing it every day. That's more and more people that are in hospital or people that are dying. Like just in your local reports, you can see this. It's the double jab that are getting sick. It's the double jab that are in hospital. And then again, that other portion will jump. They might not be double jabbed. Maybe they just got their second jab. They're not 14 days out or however many days it is. Maybe they got one jab, right? So they're just saying, right? Oh, the rest are unvaccinated. Well, technically they are. Soon to be, everybody's about to be unvaccinated because they're, the booster, right? And people around here right now, there's a strike going on, right, for EAs and I don't know, janitors and different ones, QP or whatever it is. And it's like, I drove by them the other day, and I don't like to not support them, but at the same time, drive by them, and they're all got the friggin' yellow fist up, right? The yellow sign, the yellow fist. And I get that's a union thing, but at the same time, whenever I see that fist raised up like that, I just think, it's communism, right? Or black power, or some kind of Bolshevik revolutionary symbol, right? That's what I see it as. And so they all get that, and they're all out with their signs, standing there, broad daylight, masked up. Probably every one of them doubled, right? Probably every one of them doubled, and they're standing out there, masked up. They absolutely, like, I was driving by, going to give them a honk, and I seen them all pass, and I just went, honk, and I just stopped at that. Like, normally go by, and people like, I'm by, I'm like, honk. And I just kept driving. And then I seen them, they were still down there tonight, some of them. Nighttime. Masked. What's with that? They're fighting wages because they want wage increases because they're not paid enough. That's understandable. You're not paid enough, sure, whatever, right? But that's what they're protesting. They're not protesting mandates. They're certainly not protesting masks. I would guarantee you that they're all double jabbed. Shouldn't say that, but I could almost guarantee it. Right? Seems to me that the only people that go around wearing masks these days are those that are double jabbed. So, anyways. So they're standing there with their masks on, out in broad daylight. You're protesting for wages, but you wouldn't protest the mandates. You wouldn't protest the masks. You wouldn't protest the injections. But now you're going to protest wages. Right when they're about to raise gas more because gas is going to get more expensive. They're going to raise your power bill. They're going to raise your grocery bill. They're going to raise everything. You're worried about wages. You're worried about wages. It ain't going to matter. It's not going to matter a thing. Inflation is coming. Wages are not going to matter. You're going to be lucky to have a job, right? You're going to be lucky if there's power this winter at some points. Protesting wages. And you won't even protest these bullshit COVID mandates. It's freaking sick. I know I'm getting sick of this. Like, they're protesting Blaine Higgs here in New Brunswick, right? And it's a political thing, right? It's not even a thing about COVID. It's not even a thing about mandates. Not even a thing about masks or passports or anything like that. No. Just Blaine Higgs really, messed up by not giving them what they wanted, right? And now they're going to turn around. They're going to say, I can't believe these people are, protesting during a pandemic. We don't have time or the money for this, right? So it's just all about pointing fingers and blaming everybody and nobody being held accountable or nobody willing to fight about what the actual issue is, right? We're busy worried about things that aren't going to matter in 6 months. And that's why we're never going to win this, right? Well, We might, but that's why collectively we're not. Because people are focused on the most most retarded stuff. It's just ridiculous. They're focused on things that don't matter, that don't have any weight in the future of where we're heading, right? It's like you're on an ice float and there's a volcano erupting behind you and the lava stream's coming down. And you're worried and you're worried about if your ice float's going to be okay, right? You're worried, you're hoping to hook on to another ice float, right? And thinking you're going to ride this out. You don't have a leg to stand on. There's nothing to, what they're fighting for is a system that's failing. They're fighting for something that has no relevance into the grand scheme of things, which goes right part and parcel with the Great Reset, right? They're focused on striking. And how many other groups are out there going to be striking here in the next few weeks, in the next month, right? There's a lot of strikes going to be going down. Well, what's that going to do, right? Unless it's specifically to strike against these restrictions and whatnot, against COVID, against this freaking tyranny that we're facing, unless it's directly against that, it doesn't matter, right? They could care less. They'd love it for you to protest against anything but COVID, right? And then, but then the whole thing is too, it's not even about COVID. COVID is the cover for everything, right? So then we focus on COVID and then don't focus on the revolution that's taking place. So they're hitting us from so many different sides. It's freaking crazy, right? You can talk about it on one side, and then you turn around and then there's like a whole nother front that you forgot all about, right? So we can get focused on COVID and then we forget about, the climate stuff that's coming in. Well, it all plays off it, right? COVID stuff was a prep to the climate stuff. And climate stuff and the wars that are coming and the, mass genocide that's taking place and the soon-to-be civil unrest that's going to take place across the world, right? Because when people wake up to this, it's going to be absolute. It's going to be like a switch, right? It's going to be like a switch, and I think that's what the plan is. And I think the whole plan is to roast these guys that are at the top, right, or that are running the game. I think the whole plan is to roast them, because for years I've watched it, and I've watched them become more and more retarded. And as I watch that, I'm like, that can't be real. They can't be actually believing the things they're saying, right? There's got to be something behind this. They can't be serious, right? And that was me giving them too much credit, maybe, right? Because once you go down that path, right? Once you turn away from God and you accept all these really evil things, right? That, like hating your fellow man and wanting to, see families destroyed, wanting to see a society crumble, wanting to, sell out your countrymen for this ideal, right? And you start traveling down that mindset, that road of thought, well, eventually your brain is going to start malfunctioning and you are going to start acting retarded. And it's going to seem like you're, it's going to seem like, well, what's going on with that guy? He can't be serious. But then we go further and further down the road and we see, oh, yeah, no, these people are 100% serious, but it still doesn't seem believable. it still to this day at points doesn't seem believable that someone could be pushing the agendas that they're pushing. But I guess when you're so far gone, when your conscience has been seared, right, to such a point, well, I guess there's only one way to go at that point. You're given over to that spirit. You're given over to that mindset. And so then you're going straight ahead, right? I suppose that's why, these pedophiles do what they do, right? Once they cross that certain bridge, there's no going back. It's their selling of their soul at that point, right? They've given it over. Because we've all done things where we felt bad about, but we knew we'd come back from them, right? I've never done anything where I'm like, there's no coming back from this, right? If I was ever at any point in time where I was in a situation where there was something where like, I'm not going to be able to come back from this, I didn't do it, right? And most people are the same way, right? I've done a lot of stuff in my day, but there were some things that I wouldn't do. There's certain places I wouldn't go, right? And there's a reason for that. Because I knew I was in a bad place to begin with, right, when I was doing it. So I knew that if I took these extra steps, then, I was going to get swallowed, right? It's like what they say, right? When you're looking into the abyss, right? You look too long, right? It sucks you in. And that's the thing, we all, in this kind of community, we spend years, time again, looking into the abyss. And sometimes you got to make sure you got a hold of some railings or something, right? That thing doesn't suck you in, because you get going down that road of that thought process of hatred and whatnot, right? And you start hating people based on what they want you to hate, right? Because they want us to hate Black people. They want us to hate, South Americans coming to the border, right? They want us to hate Middle Easterners, right? They want us to hate all these different people. But they don't want us to hate them for a reason that's worthwhile, right? They want us to hate them for those reasons they give us, right? And for the most part, that doesn't work, right? That only works on certain people, right? Like, I don't look at all people from the Middle East, right, and think that they're terrorists. Where I know people that they don't like people from the Middle East because they think that they're all terrorists, right? But I'm not that way. But at the same time, I understand, where that side comes from. But I also don't understand this side that's like, oh no, none of them are terrorists. In fact, all of them are better than us, and we need to embrace them and become them, right? To be better people, right? I don't understand either side, right? I don't understand when you can't see something for what it is and take note and just let it be, right? There's people in this community, right? I know they're from the Middle East. They don't really talk English very well, but if I were to see them, I would say, hey, how's it going, right? That's just how I am, right? Same with a Black person, right? If I see a Black person, I'm going to talk to a Black person, right? See, like, I grew up like I'm a redneck, right? I grew up in the sticks. So I actually always had a thing where I always got along pretty good with other minorities, right? Well, other poor people, right? Not that I was poor, but that the redneck kind of way, and like the inner city kind of way, there's a certain thing that clicks there. I don't know what it is, but it's just it's that thing that you're an outsider, right? You didn't come from a white picket fence, right? I came from a good home. Don't get me wrong. I came from a really good home, but I did grow up in the sticks, right? I did grow up in the sticks, and but I was raised and always went to church and stuff like that, right? My dad worked hard, my mother worked. So it was most of the trouble that I got into was my own doing, right? Like I allowed myself to get into trouble because, you know, I was growing up and I was kept from a lot of stuff, from doing a lot of things, going a lot of places, because my parents knew kind of not to, you know, let me go certain places because it was only, going to be drinking and partying going on. And then eventually, I decided I was going to go and do that thing anyways, right? And that was when I got older, right? When I had that ability. When I was younger, I couldn't. I was in my father's house under my father's rule, but, eventually you get older and they don't fight you as much. And you go out and you get into trouble, right? And then you get off and you get on your own, and then you get into a lot more trouble, right? And then at some point in time, over the years, you start smartening up, right? But I always knew. That's why it's such a struggle. I always knew throughout that time kind of where I was with God, right? I always had a relationship with God, even at my kind of lower points, right? But, those were the worst times when I look back on them, because at those points in time, I was at my most, I was kind of in my own ignorance is bliss kind of thing, right? But I always had these moments where it was like, you got to smarten up, right? And from years of being that prodigal son and, living a life of, I should say living a life of, right? Because that makes it sound like I was just sitting nonstop, right? I was still a normal person, but I was more, I did what I wanted more, right? And I didn't have much responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Right? So as I got older and I decided I need to have more responsibility, I need to be, living a life that is kind of more in line with being who I know I should be, because the life I'm living right now is not going to have that in its future. So I had to really make some changes, right? So I did, and I'm getting there day by day, right? Day by day. That's the thing, you put off the old man and you put on the new man, but every day you got to put on the new man. And there are many days where I didn't put on that new man, right? So, I'll admit that, right? I'm not going to be a person that'll say, when I got saved, I was once saved, always saved, and it was, but I changed in an instant, right? Well, I was a young kid when I accepted Christ, right? When I believed on Jesus Christ, and I believed, right? I understood, but my understanding then was as a child, right? And it got to a certain point, and then I went into Arrested Development because, that's not cool anymore. I gotta go and do these other things, right? I gotta do these other things. I gotta go and try to be a stud, right? Like, you don't have time for this. I gotta go and be a man, be a dude. Gotta go do dude things. Waste of time. Y'all were raised Christians? Yeah, man, I was a weak city boy until a few years ago. No real responsibilities. Yeah, no, I was raised Christian and stuff, but like I say, I went my way for quite a few years. But I always, even when I was going my own way, it was kind of like, it was a process, right? I was still doing a lot of reading my Bible at different times and doing a lot of research and stuff like that, but focusing more on those other things, right? And less of the things of God, right? Even with the stuff that I was researching, right? I would research stuff that might be biblically related, but I was focusing more on the unbiblical side of it. And that always led to the same thing, which was away from Christ, ultimately. So I knew that I didn't want to go down that path. I knew I wanted to go in the direction of where Christ was, where the Holy Spirit was, where God was leading me. And that's kind of where the whole thing is today, because, I see a lot of, the response to what we're seeing with the whole worldwide revolution, the response, and what I've always said is the response, the reactionary movement to all this is going to be the movement that brings about the Antichrist. Now, what that movement will be and what it'll look like, I don't know. It's whoever wins out this upcoming cataclysm, right? Because basically, again, you might as well say, like, if the 4 horses are being unleashed, there's going to be a lot of people that are killed. There's going to be a third of the world that are killed, right? And that's a lot of people. And so that's a lot of destruction too, right? And during that, there's, it's going to be by the sword, by the famine, by the pestilence, by the beasts of the earth, whatever that means. Okay? Sword could be war. Beasts of the earth could just mean nihilism, right? Brute savagery, which is what Albert Pike's War said it'll be, right? Because the general populace will understand the true meaning of and the original true origin of savagery, right? Because it says that the general populace will rise up against these destroyers of civilization. So that means to me that there is going to be an awakening to all of this absolute wickedness and chaos that we see, right? It's going to be like I think of Esther, right? Where it's like, again, maybe I said this before, but Haman is building the gallows for his enemies, the Jews, Mordecai. And then in the end, he and his sons end up going on that gallows. And then Purim happens, where they go throughout the land and they kill all their enemies for a certain point of time, right? Like a purge, like, that another predictive programming that we've been accustomed to. Yeah, man. Look at Italy, non-stop protests. I was thinking of that, but if I participating in fraud, I'll let you guys keep on talking. Sorry that I'm good. Glad you guys are chatting. Good to see everybody. Fritz Bar, good to see you. Armchair, good to see you. Camo, good to see you. Glory be to God, indeed. I just think that, again, if this is the horseman, 1/3 of the population has to die before the new order can actually come in, right? When the beast system truly comes in. But the time period of that happening is going to be a very short period once it starts, right? It's going to happen rather quickly. And again, it's going to seem like it's a tribulation, but does anybody really see these vax passports really taking much effect yet? I don't know. Is it going to be December that they're supposed to take effect, or be implemented by January or something like that? I've gone everywhere and haven't seen one. Australia, I seen Enigma there. Rich, he was going through the mall, and saw a few places there wouldn't let him in because he didn't have the ID. But they're not doing that here. There's not too many places that are doing that where I'm at. I don't live in the rest of Canada, so I can't really say that. But I know where I'm at. There's no places that are doing it. Not many, none that I go to, anyways. Not that I have to worry about. But maybe some places in the city, but I think there's a lot of places that aren't doing it, to be honest with you. So there is a lot of pushback that is happening. There's a lot of stuff that's going on, which, again, it's all part of it, because we can't, it doesn't really matter if COVID is a fraud or not. in one sense, because they can burn a few people that they want to burn. That can appease the populace, right? They can kill off however many millions or billions have taken the jabs, right? They can kill us with power outages and starvation and different things like that. Like, they can do all this stuff like very easily, and it can happen in a very, quick period of time. So I think that there's a lot of people in 1/3 of the world's population that is on the chopping block, right? It's a lot of people. I don't think they care about a lot of people. I think there's a lot of people that could, they don't care if they fall on a sword, right? Even their own minions, right? People that are working for the agenda, because they're not in on the ground floor, right? They're just useful idiots. Useful idiots rounding up the useless eaters, right? Useless eaters. Consumers, producers. You're not producing, you're only consuming. All of these people that are pro-jab and pro-lockdown, pro all this stuff, they're the ones that are becoming more and more useless. They're the ones that are becoming useless eaters. They're only consuming. They're not producing anything, right? Whereas it's the others that are doing most of the producing, right? Still consuming, but we're producing. They want to take away the ability for everybody, right, that currently produces. They don't want anybody to be able to produce. So therefore, by default, making you a useless eater. And if you're a useless eater, then you don't hold any merit. And if you don't hold any merit, then you're not good for society, right? Because the greater good is what's good. And you're not good, right? You've got too much carbon. We need to reduce you to 0 carbon, right? You just need to die. Sacrifice yourself on the altar of Gaia, right? 0 carbon. You are nothing if you are 0 carbon, right? And they just say that we need to take it down to 0, and that is our goal. Our goal. If they're talking about taking a population down to 0, they're talking about murdering that entire population. That Deagle report, I remember when that Deagle report from that website, deagle.com, is that what it is? But I remember that back like years ago, well before the pandemic, years like before Donald Trump, before like quite a few years ago. I remember that Deagle report. And it was like, I remember as soon as I seen it, I'm like, well, obviously they're planning on depopulating us by that point in time, which was right on schedule to what I figured they were going to do anyways, with how, just looking at the purveyors of Bible end times prophecy, you get a timeline for things because they're running on a certain timeline, right? And they know people that know people. Some of them are just useless pawns too, to get everybody to believe in the pre-tribulation rapture, right? So that when that doesn't happen, when all the chaos starts, that you lose your moral compass and lose all faith, right? Because you weren't captured away from this thing, right? But then I thought too, maybe the pre-tribulation rapture is anybody that's loyal to the state to be flown off to Israel. Isn't that be crazy if that was the rapture? The fake rapture, right? They come and they steal people away by night, take them to a plane, an airfield, fly them to Israel. Just to see the Antichrist get coronated. No, I don't think that'll happen. But they get people to believe the pre-tribulation rapture, so that when chaos does break, and as people are already falling away, the church has already been in the state of falling away. Society's been in the state of falling away because, we were a, Christian nation at one point in time. The majority of people were Christian, guaranteed, of some denomination, of some church. But now we don't call ourselves a Christian nation. Right? We're a melting pot. Just a big pot of gruel, gray gruel. That's what they want, right? Big pot of gray gruel. Big pot of gray gruel. But you know what, though? Again, going back to it all, we talk about 1984. In 1984, the whole thing was no sex and no basically free thought of anything, right? Like the whole opposite of what's going on right now, right? The so-called 1984 people that are trying to erase history, they're promoting all the degeneracy and all the sexualization and whatnot. So is it possible that they're not promoting all of this openly satanic filth so that when a generation wakes up, that they're going to be 100% opposed to all of this evil, wicked darkness, black side of the yin yang? Right? Is that not possible? Is it not possible that people through sin can be redeemed? Redemption through sin, you might call it. Heard of that? 1666, redemption through sin. Is that not why they're pushing all of the governments and the religions and all the institutions and everything to be filled with pedophiles and degeneracy and everything, to cause a mass revolt against the world system in order to bring it crashing down so that society can be built anew, right? And man can truly ascend and become God, right? And technology can be free for everybody. And then we can all get the real mRNA, right? We can all get the, friggin' Neuralink. That's the great revival, right? What? Yeah. Like what they're calling the great revival. Is that what you mean, Camo? Yeah. I think I hear that all the time from people that aren't necessarily. They talk about God a lot. Some of them even, will name drop Christ. But then they'll also talk about man ascending, right? And creating anything his imagination can aspire to, and going beyond the stars, like friggin' Mormonism, right? Becoming gods and being your own gods in the universe and having your own, galaxies and creating your own planets, and so on and so forth, right? Limitless, right? Is that not kind of what is being projected, this Christos consciousness, right? The church is failing right now because it refuses to do anything. When we were younger, there was a lot more aggressiveness on the side of the church and churches, and how they reacted to sin and how they treated sin, and so on and so forth. And there were many people that would have left the church because they would have felt judged and so on and so forth. And in one sense, that was the church's job, right? That was the church's job. But also inside the church came sneaks that crept in unawares, and they also got the congregations to be, bedazzled with all kinds of different things, and to have them be focused on legalism, right? And focused on appearance and how things looked, right? And new hymns and new ways to do things, right? And all these different doctrines and new ways and stuff, right? But everybody left the church back when everything was all still hard and whatnot, right? That, and everybody's super legalistic. And then everybody left, and all of a sudden the church started going super liberal because it could infiltrate in that aspect. It's like, well, we lost so many people. Now we got to, be less like the church and be more like the world to try to get people to come back. And since they've done that, they've gotten weaker and weaker and weaker to where they become lukewarm, where they're not bringing anybody in of any kind of substance, but they're bringing everybody in with their weight with them, and then they're trying to reform the church to suit their needs, right? The institution, right, that's man-made, like as far as what we see, is wholly and totally corrupt, right? And taken over by complete degenerate men. Now, not everybody, but a lot of them have sold out for sure, right? And a lot of congregations and a lot of people that call themselves Christian have let themselves be beguiled by pastors for so long that they haven't looked into anything on their own, and they stopped being confident and relying on the Holy Spirit to give them the doctrine, but they rely on what the pastor says. And they assume that the pastor is doing all of his own research, and that he's not just going and looking at who he looks up to and just, reading verbatim what that guy said, and you see a lot of that. And so we've gotten ourselves into a real state of affairs where, again, we're all collectively responsible. I left the church because I didn't feel like I was like the other people at the church, right? And I felt the church was holding me back, right, from doing dude stuff, right? They would judge me. And I was kind of a black sheep anyway, so it was easy to go, right? Because I didn't act like most of the other church kids, right? I was a little more aggressive, a little more rough and tumble, right? I wasn't typical, right? But to the world, I was still a church boy, right? And I acted like a church boy, right? So isn't that funny? When I'm around my church friends, I'd be more like myself. But then when I'd be around the world, I'd act more like a church boy, right? And then when you get to a certain point where it's like, what are you going to act like, right? Who are you going to go hang with? Well, if you go hang with the world, you can't act like a church boy anymore. So you have to act like the world. And so then you stop hanging out with your church friends, right? Because they're just not as cool anymore. I did for a while, but once you get going on and you're not hanging around them anymore on a regular basis, then it's like you're left to your vices and you do your thing. And how the heck do we get back on this topic? Collectively, we've all brought ourselves to this. So what do we do, right? What do we do? How do we fight this and stuff, right? I don't really know how we fight it. I think this is going how it's going to go, right? There's going to be a great awakening, right? There's going to be a mass awakening, a mass red pilling, guaranteed, right? Like, I've known this for a while, but, in one sense, you still hope, right? And regardless, I'm for not the satanic degeneracy, right? It's just about knowing that at some point in time, right, the Great Awakening is going to come against you, right? At some point in time, Christianity is not going to be able to go along with it because they're going to be like, hey, we got the life extension technology, right? We do get this Neuralink, we might as well use it. Well, we have to do a universal system because we can't allow what happened to happen again, right? And by that point in time, most people will be like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, that's right. If you're talking to God, God's not English, right? He's not Jewish, right? God's Jewish. No. Is he? Is he? He can talk to anybody. Talk to anybody in their language, so I don't see how God is Jewish. To me, that's weird when they say that he's Jewish, right? You can say that Jesus on this earth was Jewish because he was of the tribe of David, right? Tribe of Judah. You could say that, right? But Jesus didn't regard himself as a, synagogue Jews. No, he didn't. No, he didn't want to be called rabbi. He wasn't about the Jewish system, just like Christ wouldn't be about the church system today. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, right? Christ was all about the law. He was all about the law of Moses. Why? Because God himself gave Moses that law. So Jesus was all about that because he was about fulfilling the law of his Father. He was about fulfilling the work of his Father, right? So it had nothing to do with Jesus being Jewish. Likewise, there's nothing to do about the church, as an institution. The church is just the body of believers, right? That makes up the body. Jesus Christ being the head of that body, right? So a head goes central nervous system, right? That's the brain, right? And then the body goes out in all the parts. So that's what the church is, all of its members. And guess what? Even the church has to have an asshole. So it's important. Someone's got to take out the trash, right? Right? Arab Christians call him Isa. Yes, I've heard that. And then, yeah, I've heard that. I don't know about the whole. I made a few videos about the Yeshua stuff. I don't call him Yeshua or Yahshua or any of that stuff like that. Like, something's never felt right with me on that, and I still don't like it. I think there's something to it, but regardless, could be wrong on it. Doesn't matter. I'm going to call him Jesus because that's what the Bible calls him, right? And anybody that tells me that the Bible is calling him a wrong name, right? And then, also says that the word Lord means Baal, right? So when you're saying Lord, you're praying to Baal, I dismiss that, right? That's bullshit. And I call bullshit. And you're full of bullshit. So beat it. Hey, you guys notice that I'm sitting in front of a wall? This is down in my basement. Cleaned it out today. Spent a lot of time down here. She was pretty bad, I'll let you know. A couple years back in the wintertime, got to get off topic here a little bit. A couple years back in the wintertime, 1:30. This ain't too bad. This ain't too bad at all. I think I covered most of the stuff I said I was going to cover. Yeah, because it all ends up going to the same thing. All roads lead to Jesus, right? All roads lead to the truth, the light. So this basement a couple years ago in the wintertime, we get some snow, get quite a bit of snow, and then we get these rains, right? And the rains would come, and the rains would just melt everything. And I live on a hill, right? So all the water would become running down underneath the snow, down the hillside, right?
and it would form a trench. It would go in and hit the house, and it would start going around the house. Well, there'd be, the banks just outside the house, but where the water would come off the roof, right? It would make a little trench. All the water would be coming around the house, and it would follow that trench, and then come just the way sediments built up over the years. It would go right into the garage, and then right where the door is, there's a little slab walkway. Garage will be over here, so water's coming in there. Then water's coming right off that slab and into the garden where the heat pump stuff is. Well, that whole little garden bed, well, that's right in front of the house, right by the basement. And there's basically, it's an old cellar, and the water's gonna leak down through there because there's a specific spot. It's almost like a vent kind of thing, right? And so, anyways, at that point in time, because all the water was running and it was raining super hard, it would come pouring down in there. So you'd have a big pool of water. Well, that started running in, and it started running in like a friggin' waterfall. And the wall was friggin' bleeding. Well, not bleeding, but water's coming out of the wall and everything, like a big crack and stuff in it. And anyway, so that's all running down, floods the basement out. And that winter, okay, and when this is all going on, right, I'm outside soaking wet, my boots, got the shovel, and I'm throwing snow